Welcome, everybody, to today's Solution Series. Our topic is U.S. Manufacturing Rebound. My name is Sheila Vertino, and I'll be your host for this program. As many of you know, the Solution Series are available at no cost as a NAIOP member benefit. These are mini webinars, and we typically take about 30 minutes or less. The goal of each program is to provide you with some quick tips, practical strategies, that type of thing, just a positive slant on trying to deal with today's business environment. As always, we invite you to help us drive the content. Let us know what kind of topics you'd like us to talk about, and if you have anybody that you could suggest as a presenter, that would be great information too. At the end, you'll receive an email, and that will you'll be able to send information to Jack, our presenter today, or if you want, you can send information to Sandy Hudson with information about speakers, and that would be hudson@naiop.org. I'd like to take a minute this morning and thank Northmark for sponsoring today's Solution Series program. A bit about Northmark. They provide commercial real estate services for investors, developers, corporations, and tenants. Offer mortgage banking and commercial loan servicing in 32 offices and property management of commercial space in 22 markets, along with corporate services, brokerage, and investment sales. We encourage you to visit the Northmark website at www.northmark.com. Okay. Now, we talked about the Solution Series as being kind of a quick bite of information and knowledge, but some topics we want to go more in-depth discussion, and we can't cover that in that quick Solution Series time frame. So for those topics, we have a 90-minute webinar format, and the difference is that these webinars are fully interactive. They allow you to submit your questions and actually talk to the presenters during the program. The next full webinar will take place, as you can see, on Thursday, December 16th. And during this webinar, we're going to explore growing opportunities in the federal real property markets. This was a session that was very highly rated at the Development 10 conference that we just held in Orlando in October. And so we're bringing you a more in-depth look at this topic. The cost of the full webinar is $65 for NAIOP members and $95 for non-members. If you'd like to register, you just go to naiop.org/webinars. Now, we're ready to get on with today's program. Today, I'm very pleased to announce that we have Jack Schultz with us, and he's the founder and CEO of Agracel, Incorporated, an industrial development firm specializing in rural America. Agracel has completed projects in 14 states and owns 7 million square feet in industrial space. Jack is also the author of Boomtown USA, The 7.5 Keys to Big Success in Small Towns, which was published by NAIOP in 2004. This project took Jack more than 3 years of intense research, looking at 15,800 small towns across the country. Boomtown USA was NAIOP's most successful publication, selling around 40,000 copies. So the thing about Jack's message in Boomtown USA is that even though it's focused on rural America, many of the lessons in there are quite applicable no matter what your market looks like. Also like to say a bit about Jack and his involvement with NAIOP, because he's been a great friend of NAIOP. He's a member of the Private Developers 3 National Forum, and he also serves on the Development Magazine editorial board. And so welcome this morning, Jack, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Wonderful to be here, Sheila. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this. I'm going to start the listeners off first with they're going to have to do some work. So if they'd each get a piece of paper out and a pencil, I've got 3 key questions I want to ask them before I start the talk. And you can't have any wrong answers here. So my first question is, when did the United States reach record manufacturing production and on an inflation-adjusted basis end up with more in sales, profits, and also export sales? And there's A, B, C, and D there. The second question, in what year, or not what year, but in when did, or what is our current share of U.S. world manufacturing? And I will give you a hint that from 1950 to 1980, our share of world manufacturing ranged from 20 to 25%. So what is it today? And the third question is, what are the key drivers of U.S. manufacturing in the future? Is it education, or is it right to work, or a combination of that? As Sheila mentioned, I wrote a book on small towns called Boomtown USA, but really the lessons learned from that apply to larger cities and really to segments of communities, as it's really a bunch of small towns put together that make up a big metropolitan area. I got started in economic development in the late 80s when we had several of our businesses that were looking at closing in our town of 12,000, probably the largest of which was a printing plant, which at one time was the world's largest press room in the world, which came to town in 1969, but just 20 years later was looking at moving out of town. And we got started doing economic development there in the late 80s. I joined NAIOP in 1994 when I had exactly one building and 72,000 square feet, and I did not know anything about development, didn't know what cap rates were, what entitlement fees had anything to do with, or anything else. And as a result of NAIOP and the lessons that I learned from the many people at NAIOP, was able to build our business today into a regional one in the Midwest and the Southeast. And today we've got about 60 buildings, and as Sheila mentioned, about 7 million square feet, and have helped to facilitate about 5,000 jobs in the communities that we work in. U.S. manufacturing employees, and as you can see from this graphic, in the late 40s, after World War II, there were about 14 million people in the manufacturing sector, and that number peaked in about 1980 at 20 million, and since then has fallen, and this year reached a low, or this past year reached a low of only 12 million people. So we've gone up, and then we've also gone down dramatically. But the value added per worker has increased dramatically over time, and is really why we get so excited at Agracel about manufacturing and manufacturing jobs in these rural communities, because this is the productivity that allows people to be able to pay higher wages in the manufacturing sector. And as this graphic shows, back in the late 40s, productivity was only about $3,000 per worker, whereas today it is up to about $130,000 per every worker that is in the manufacturing sector. And as I mentioned, that translates into higher wages. This graphic shows that manufacturing pays about $70,000 per job on average, compared to non-manufacturing, which is about 15% lower than that. At the same time, the manufacturing sector has some dramatic multiplier impacts upon the economy. And as you can see here, manufacturing at the top has about 1.5 times the economic power generated from every dollar that's paid, whereas things like wholesale trade are about 1/3 of that. And I've got some data later that we'll share with you that shows that the manufacturing jobs, for every manufacturing job that's created, another 3 jobs are created in the economy. Which brings us to the first question. And the first question is, when did the United States reach a record in both sales, profits, and exports of manufacturing goods? And if all you had listened to was Lou Dobbs when he was on TV, you would have thought that back here in the mid-50s was when the United States reached record profit or record production in the manufacturing sector. But as you can see from this graphic, the United States actually hit records in manufacturing production in 2008, and while we have taken a downward spike in 2009, we anticipate that with what we're seeing is that we'll see that increase, and that by 2011 or 2012, we will again see records in the manufacturing sector. This shows it on a more recent basis from 2003, and you can see what happened in 2009, where our production in the manufacturing sector decreased dramatically, but since then we've seen it increase dramatically in the latter part of 2009 and 2010. We have seen this in our own business. We, for example, have sold some of our buildings to people who are starting up new manufacturing production. A couple of great examples was Daniel and Janet Lim, who is 44 years of age. They immigrated to the United States when they were in their late teens. Their first job was living in a hotel and cleaning hotel rooms for $1 a day. Went to college, saved their money, went to college, got a job with a utility company, set up their own manufacturing business called Carolina Accents, and today Daniel and Janet Lim, who bought a building from us in Ripley, Mississippi, have manufacturing facilities in Mississippi, North Carolina, Vietnam, Malaysia, and other countries. Another example, we sold a manufacturing building in Greenville, Illinois this past year to a Mexican company, or a Mexican family who their father was orphaned at 11 years of age and dreamed of becoming a bullfighter down in Mexico, was taken in by his uncle, eventually got a job on the Illinois Central Railroad, started to make tortilla chips in his kitchen. He and his wife, and now their 12 children, have grown that. 7 of the 12 children produce those chips today and have manufacturing plants scattered all over the country. We've also seen Caterpillar bring back excavators to the U.S., NCR bringing back ATM machines to Georgia from China. GE is starting to move some of their production back to the U.S., and Ford is planning to move about 2,000 jobs back to the U.S. By 2012. Which brings us to the second question, and that is, in what year or what percentage of manufacturing production does the United States have on an international basis? And as you can see by the red line, it has remained remarkably steady at between 20 and 25%. Today it's about 22% of world production is produced here in the United States. We've all heard of China, and you can see this dark blue line is the growth that we have seen in manufacturing production from China, from roughly about 2% of world production to 15%, but they have really taken that share of production from other countries like Germany, which have lost their share of manufacturing production. This spaghetti soup graph here, I'll try to explain to you, shows what has happened on jobs in the general economy. And the red line is what has happened in the way of jobs in the general economy, which you can see we have lost about 6% of our jobs in the U.S. During this Great Recession, and it has just started to rebound here in the last 6 months. More common would be this dark blue line, which was a 1948 recession, which reached 5% loss in jobs in about 13 months, but within another year had recovered all of those jobs. The last recession before this one was this brown line, which shows about 2% loss of jobs, but we recovered those in about 48 months. Our guess is it'll take probably another 3 or 4 years to gain back to full production. Here is what happened in the manufacturing sector this year. First part of the year, we gained some jobs in the manufacturing sector, have lost since then. Excuse me just a minute. And have lost some of those jobs in the last few months, but we've had a net gain of about 127,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector in 2010. Brings us to the third question, is what are the key drivers of manufacturing jobs in the future? This is a graphic which shows the unemployment rate across the whole economy. For those, the red line is for those without a high school diploma, and those communities that are not reaching out and trying to keep their kids from dropping out are losing a major resource, in our opinion. Whereas you can see here with bachelor's degree, it's still at 5%, way too high, but much less than what has happened with those without a high school diploma. And what we're seeing in the manufacturing sector is that it is becoming more skilled. This is the percentage of jobs from 2000 in the gray to 2008 in the green. And you can see that less than high school and high school, but no college, has decreased. whereas college and those with a bachelor's degree have gone up. And what we are seeing is that there is a dramatic increase in the number of manufacturing plants where you have to have some college, some cases 2 years minimum, and in other cases a 4-year degree to work in a manufacturing plant. I talked earlier about that printing plant in our hometown, which ended up closing in 2004. At one time it had 1,600 jobs in that plant, 575,000 square feet. We ended up buying that plant for $2 million, or about $350 a square foot, put another $13 million into it with a 100,000 square foot addition, and have now repositioned that plant into a food DC, but unfortunately only have 200 jobs in that sector. That plant at one time, the average jobs in there were paying about $50,000. Unfortunately, became non-competitive with other parts of the economy, other parts of the country, and they were forced to close, which was a major blow to our community. But it's, again, a case of where you have to continually be reinventing yourself as a community. Second key factor that we see is the right to work states, which are shown in the dark green. And you can see that those are primarily in the plains and in the south. The percentages are the percentage of jobs in the manufacturing sector that are represented by labor unions. Texas was 7.5. North Carolina is the low with 2.9%. Michigan is the high with 32.2%. What we are seeing in site searches with manufacturers is that they are looking at, just as retailers look at location, 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 is that we see that manufacturing companies are looking at labor, labor, labor. And the questions are, is that labor available? Is it highly trained? And is it going to be flexible to be able to make the changes that we're going to need to make in our manufacturing process over the years? Or is it going to be rigidly controlled, top-down, like we see in many of the labor union-led organizations? The key factor that we look at as we continue to look at manufacturing in this country is a number that comes out from the BLS on the 17th of each month, and it is the capacity utilization number. And if there's only one number that I can look at on a monthly basis, this would be the number that I would look at. And it is a percentage of the manufacturing space that is being utilized out of the total. And what we have found is that when this number gets above 80%, which is shown here, as you can see back in the mid-80s or mid-90s when we were doing a lot of build-to-suit projects, that is when people are typically building new projects. It's when you lose those new plants, like we saw in early 2000, and then more importantly here from 2008 to 2009, when the capacity utilization fell to a historically low level of 67%. Since then, we have seen it rebound to just under 75% and see that number continuing to tick up, and think that it will result in, and we hope will result in, more build-to-suit opportunities when that number gets above 80% here in another year or two. One of the key factors we also have looked at and studied is auto plants in the United States. And in our business, we don't build auto plants, but what we see is that we want to work with the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers to those auto plants, which can open up a plant that has 50 to 200 jobs and can create some great high-paying jobs in small towns around the country. These red dots show each auto plant in the country that were opened prior to 1990. These blue dots show that during the 90s that the auto production was starting to move into the south, and the yellow dots show that it has definitely come more into the southern part of the United States during the 2000s, as we've seen it come out of the Midwest, where it had particularly been done. This is a distribution. This is from 2005, and you can see that each dot represents where a Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 supplier to the automotive industry. You can see the concentration in Michigan, northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and what we're seeing is that is starting to move here into the South with the current economy. This was a study that the Mackinac Institute out of Michigan did, and what they looked at was what was happening in Michigan compared to Alabama, and what their finding was that by 2010, 2011, on a constant dollar basis, is that the per capita income in Alabama was going to pass that of Michigan because of Alabama having more manufacturing production and Michigan continuing to lose their manufacturing base to other states. This was a study that Toyota did, which looked at where they were going to locate their next manufacturing plant, and what they looked at in this yellow circle right here is where they ended up putting it, Tupelo, Mississippi, a great success story that was at one time one of the poorest communities in the country. Today is a tremendous success story, one that we use in examples when we talk about success stories in communities. But Toyota found that 32.4% of the workers in that area had manufacturing experience compared to a relatively small percentage in other parts of the country. And Tupelo is not the only shining star in Mississippi. Just south of that in Columbus, we've done some work, and in the last 5 years, Columbus, Mississippi, also a great success story, has attracted over $3.5 billion in new manufacturing investment, creating about 4,000 jobs that are paying an average of $54,000 in a diverse area of steel manufacturing, diesel engine plant, aviation, drones, and many other industries that have located in Columbus, Mississippi. Another study that we think shows the importance of manufacturing base to a community or to a town, and this shows the percentage of employment in manufacturing and what the per capita taxes are in a community. That the higher the percentage of manufacturing jobs in a community, the lower the per capita taxes, again because of the impact of the manufacturing and the multiplier impact of manufacturing plants upon a community. This is a study that the American Farmland Trust did in over 100 communities scattered all over this country, and what they found is for every dollar, and that's shown by the red line, every dollar paid in property taxes, commerce and industry gets back 27 cents in the way of services, and whereas residents get back $1.17 for every dollar that they pay in property taxes, and why it is a loser's game to be just a bedroom community, and why we've literally had communities that have taken a bed up to Main Street and burnt it on the square to signify to their residents that they cannot afford to be just a bedroom community and have everybody driving out of town every day to work. Taking this and putting it on a local basis, here in Effingham, Illinois, town of 12,000, if we build a new $5 million manufacturing plant, normal property tax on that is $121,226. We're in an enterprise zone, which gives 10 years tax abatement, so the taxing bodies will get nothing for the first 10 years, but using this formula, the taxing bodies will gain a net over and above the services provided, a net $8.7 million over a 20-year period, and that does not take into account this, which is the impact, and again, the multiplier impact of what 100 new manufacturing jobs mean to a community and all of the great things that happen to a community as a result of bringing those type of jobs to your town. So again, getting back to our key questions that we asked at the start of the talk, record manufacturing production in the U.S. occurred not in the 50s, but in 2008. And our share of world manufacturing has remained steady at about 22%. And if you want to get involved in manufacturing in the future, you need to have an educated workforce, and you need to fight to have right to work in your states. Thank you very much for listening to me today. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer any. If you'd send me an email at jschultz@agracel.com, I'll religiously get back to you and answer any questions that you might have about the presentation today. Sheila, thanks very much for inviting me.
Jack, the pleasure was ours. Thanks for another terrific presentation and really a very positive look at the current state of manufacturing in the United States. Solution Series is taking a break now for the holidays, and our next Solution Series program will be in 2011 on January 19th. We invite you to watch your email. We'll send you a message from NAIOP Corporate with the program link. Thank you again, Jack, and thank you all for listening to our session today. Goodbye for now.